Georgia versus Alabama, another big-time matchup. Can Georgia slay the boogeyman finally? Got a great return guest, JWill from the Film Guide Network. Let's get ready to grind some tape.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Yeah, so, of course, all the narrative, all the storylines, Georgia. I guess first off, I wanted to maybe get your thoughts from last week. I know it's a little older topic now, but Georgia gets a scrappy 16-9 victory over Georgia Tech. I think everybody was kind of real surprised on how Gunnar Stockton looked. The defense looked great, holding Haynes King to 9 points. I think there was a stat, maybe I heard that he started 23 games. That was the first time he was held to no rushing touchdowns or passing touchdowns, which is impressive. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on like what you think the issues were with Gunnar, why he maybe looked kind of sluggish and kind of struggled.
Yeah, I think obviously an off day from him. And I think that ultimately I thought Georgia Tech did a great job in their passing game. I thought the zone coverages that they threw at Gunnar, they were really sticky with him. So it kind of made some of those tight windows. Usually throws that Gunnar had been making all season, or at least for the majority of the season, I would say really since Kentucky on. So basically after the Alabama game on throughout this season, you've seen Gunnar Stockton really progress and really continue to develop and be one of the best quarterbacks in this conference. It didn't look like that last Friday against Georgia Tech. So first thing you always got to do, you give credit to Georgia Tech. But I think you can almost chop it up as it was just one of those days for Gunnar and for the offense in totality outside of Nate Frazier, I would say, where things just didn't look the way that they typically had throughout this season. So I think the biggest thing, though, to take away from that game is, I think people watch that Georgia Tech game and now they walk into this Alabama game with some questions about how Gunnar Stockton is going to play. I didn't think Gunnar played bad the first time around against Alabama. I think he threw for like 180 yards or something like that. But you kind of want him to play better than he did in that game, or at least you want the offense to make more plays than they did that first time around against Alabama. So I wouldn't say that you really need to be too concerned about Gunnar in these big-time matchups. He has showed time and time again that he shows up for them, and he plays. It's one of the best times that he plays more times than not. So I would just say that, Georgia Tech had a great defensive game plan. They executed it, but Georgia had a better defensive game plan, and they really executed it. So take more from the defense that they're continuing to stack great performances as they head into against a really good quarterback in Ty Simpson. Take positives from that and trust the offense knowing that Gunnar Stockton's going to play better.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. And I guess on the injury front, as we jump into the Georgia-Alabama game, so I know definitely Drew Bobo is probably definitely out, and you got Malachi Tolliver. Is that how you pronounce his name? And then, So from what you've been hearing, do we even get Bobo the rest of the year? Because I've heard he's done for the year. They're kind of quiet about it. What have you kind of heard about it?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the reports that he might be done for the year. I don't know if there's anything conclusive there. I do know, you're not going to get Drew Bobo this weekend. And the other thing on top of that, if you were to get a home playoff game, like say Georgia loses this weekend and you get a home playoff game and you're in the first round of the playoffs, I don't know if you get Drew Bobo back for that game either. So it's a massive loss for that offensive line. No, Drew Bobo is not the most talented player up front for Georgia, but he's certainly one of the most consistent players, and he kind of holds everybody together. I think center can be at times one of the more underrated positions, and Drew Bobo has certainly been that for them this year. And I think that him and Gunnar Stockton seem to always be on the same page, and I think you kind of saw a drop-off in the offense, specifically in the run game, when Bobo was not out there. So hopefully, I'm sure this week, though, Georgia's experimented with some different options. Malachi Tolliver was the guy that stepped in for him at the Georgia Tech game, but I'm sure they looked at other options. Walt Claire Flynn was a transfer they brought in this offseason. He plays center. Cortez Smith, the true freshman from Parkview, he's in the mix as well. And they cross-train guys. They always have. Tate Ratledge spoke about that during his time in Georgia of how he took snaps at center throughout practice. So I know they could do that. So we'll just see what they ultimately think is the best plan. I would expect that Malachi Tolliver is probably the first guy that they throw out there. Whether or not he's the guy that finishes game, we'll have to see how that goes.
And is he a redshirt senior? So he's been around, right? So he's been around the program?
He's been around for a minute, that's for sure.
Good deal. And then I was listening to Dawg Nation earlier. It looks like both teams are really banged up. Is it Overton?
Yeah, LT Overton.
How do you think this kind of changes things with Alabama? I know everybody has a lot of injuries, but how are they looking? They're just really banged up from what I've been hearing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of you get into the month of December and you play in the SEC. This is how the injury report's going to look for you, unfortunately, and both teams are dealing with that. I know Jam Miller was questionable on their injury report, but I would say that he's not going to play. I don't know if anybody saw – I know most people probably saw the injury from the Iron Bowl last week, and it didn't look good, so I wouldn't expect them to have their starting running back either. LT Overton, that guy is a true difference maker for them up front on the defensive line. So he's not the guy that's going to be matched up against Georgia's center or really the interior offensive lineman. That's going to be Tim Keenan, who is really good as well. But LT Overton is really that consistent difference maker. I mean, he's the guy that made the play against Cash Jones on 4th and short in the game last time. He's one of those guys for them. But still really good defensive line for them other than the two guys I've already mentioned. They got James Smith as well. Jan Zapier has been really good for them. The linebackers are good, and the secondary has been playing good. But still a massive loss for them. So both teams coming into this one with some key pieces missing. I think also another thing to note for Alabama is that their center, Parker Brailsford, he had basically a cast on his left foot in the Iron Bowl, and he was hobbling out there. I don't know how that's going to look for him. He wasn't on the injury report, but I don't expect him to be 100% healthy either.
Yeah. Might be a battle of the who's got the better backup centers, right?
Yeah, definitely. Very well could be.
Yeah. So looking at this, so 2.5-point spread. We do know, Georgia lost earlier in the year. We all know that. We got all the storylines. Kirby 1-7. And I also noticed that each defense has gotten better and better looking at the stats. Mm-hmm. Like even Alabama is top 10 against pass. I think they're 36 against the rush. Georgia, top 10 against the rush. I think top 12, top 15 total defense. So they've slowly gotten better. Georgia wins if they do. Give me 3 things. Maybe the keys to victory.
3 things. I think number 1, you got to be way better on third down. Obviously, you can't be 13 of 19 on third down as a defense. But the odds of Ty Simpson in that offense starting 9 for 9 on third down this time around, highly unlikely. But you got to be better on third down. So that's rule number 1 defensively. The second part, I'll stick with the third down theme. Offensively, if you want to flip on that side of the ball, Georgia cannot be living in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 7 or plus. Alabama, like I mentioned, has a really good secondary. They're one of the best passing defenses in the country. And if they're sticking you in those positions consistently, it's going to be a rough day. And if it's a game of that, if it's a game of who is going to execute on 3rd and long more times than the other, Alabama probably wins that game just because that's what they've been living in all year because they don't have a run game. Georgia does have a run game. So you got to win on 1st and 2nd down. Those are the biggest priorities that I would have on offense for Georgia is like if we can get a 4-yard run or we can get a 5-yard run and we can just make it 2nd and manageable or 3rd and manageable, live in those areas of the game, I think Georgia's going to be okay because that is Georgia's biggest advantage in this one is that you can be multifaceted on offense. You have a run game that you can rely on, and you can play off play action. Alabama, especially if Jam Miller is going to be out for this game, they haven't been able to find that. They get 3-yard chunks and things like that in the run game, but it hasn't been very consistent for them. And it's put a lot of pressure on Ty Simpson and that offensive shoulders to produce in the passing game. So that's Georgia's biggest advantage. So if they can do that, I think they'll be successful. And then the other one, my boss, Brooks Austin, came up with this theory a few years ago. I think it was actually heading into maybe the 2021 national title game, and it has stayed true ever since. So I'll spit this one out, not claiming it as my own, though, of Georgia cannot be the team to make the last mistake. And what do I mean by that? Well, the last mistake in these Georgia-Alabama games, the team that makes the last mistake is usually the team that loses. Bryce Young made the final mistake in the national title game by throwing an interception to Keely Ringo. Georgia had the last mistake in this year's matchup when Nate Frazier fumbled on their own side of the field, and Alabama goes on to score a touchdown. Carson Beck made the final mistake against Alabama on the road last year, throwing an interception on Georgia's last possession. The team that makes the last mistake in this game usually is the team that loses, so don't you dare make the last mistake. And really, you got to protect the football because that's cost you multiple times in this matchup.
Completely agree. All great points. Also, try to win the penalty battle. Can't have some big penalties. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out just because I heard it earlier and it came to me. I think it'd be, what do you say, poetic justice is, and he wasn't on the injury report and he's been hurt all year ever since that game. Any chance Talon Taylor, they give redemption and give him a deep shot again. He knows he probably had nightmares about it. I would love for him to get a big catch in the game, sneak him in there again. He's a big-time prospect, but I don't know. They were mentioning that earlier. I thought that'd be awesome if that happened.
Yeah, I mean, getting Talon Taylor back would be huge for this offense because, to see a true freshman get in the mix on a wide receiver room where they took multiple transfers this offseason, Zachariah Branch is playing really well, and they got veteran guys like Dylan Bell and London Humphreys who they're trying to feed as well. For a true freshman to insert his name into that mix, obviously you've got some special things about you. Obviously this coaching staff thinks very highly of you. So I would imagine going into this game, since it would be his first game back, I would imagine that it's probably going to be something where, hey, we'll use him if we feel like we have to, but if not, we're going to be okay. But I would certainly say that there's a good chance that Talon Taylor is part of this offense when it comes to playing in the playoffs this year. And maybe he could shake some things up because, like you're mentioning, I mean, in the Alabama game, this isn't a guy that they just throw out there because they trust him. This is a guy that they throw out there because he thinks he can make explosive plays for this offense. He can be a playmaker, and he had an opportunity to make one against Alabama. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for him. But, yeah, it'd be a really cool moment for him specifically, really, to redeem himself in that moment and make sure that he gets his get back against them.
Yeah, sure. I guess one other thing, because it's going to be, hey, can we get to Ty Simpson? And the D-line has really gotten better over the last several weeks, getting a lot of pressure. Who do you maybe see or some good positive matchups for Georgia? Maybe try to at least get Ty Simpson get in his face.
Yeah, I think you got quite a few options that you could really look at. I mean, I think there was a little bit of a narrative, and it was a big talking point last time Georgia played Alabama where Georgia was not getting after Ty Simpson. They weren't getting him on the ground. Two things on that. We went back, obviously, watched the tape from that game. Georgia tried. I mean, they threw all kinds of stuff at Alabama. They were blitzing linebackers. They were blitzing from space. They were adding in guys. I thought Gabe Harris and Kotavious Johnson almost got home a couple of times, but Ty Simpson was playing on time so perfectly in that game to where it was nearly impossible to get him on the ground. I mean, it's why Kirby Smart joked about it after the game of, I thought about just dropping back 11 at times because we weren't getting home and we were probably better off if we just put all 11 guys in coverage. So, but the difference between that game and this game is, one, Quintavious Johnson and Gabe Harris have gotten way more experience than Sim. I think they're playing really good ball for Georgia. They've been some difference makers. You add in a guy like Zayden Walker, a true freshman linebacker. He's starting to add in on the mix and pass rush. I think Chris Cole has gotten a little more comfortable in his role because, I mean, that's a guy that went from playing linebacker last year to now he's added as like a rusher for Georgia. So he's kind of this hybrid linebacker that Georgia likes to use all the time. And it's a lot of responsibilities for him. And at times they can be a little overwhelming. And I think you've kind of seen that from Chris Cole, but I think you've seen him settle in a little bit. CJ Allen's been a great rusher for Georgia, and he wasn't exactly 100% healthy probably in that Alabama game. He was still kind of working his way back from the injury that he was dealing with at the beginning of the year. So you just kind of have more options to work with, if you will, if you're Georgia in this pass rush. And I think that you've seen guys get better. Christian Miller has been a guy that can make some plays as well. Elijah Griffin's been a force interiorly. So you got to rely on those guys. You got to trust them, but also you got to make sure that Ty Simpson isn't able to escape out of the pocket and just get out there and throw bombs on you because he locks his eyes on downfield and he makes plays. Yeah.
And he's slivery too, man. I saw him in the Iron Bowl sneak out and he'd barely get the first down. So we got to really watch that. And then I did
some athleticism to him.
He does. And I heard the term last week. I never thought I'd hear it. And then he got a pick. Are you on Robinson's Island? I heard that the commentator, that was funny because he had some issues. So if he's starting to lock down that side of the field, that's always positive.
Yeah, I mean that's another great point too. Of last time Georgia played this Alabama team, of that secondary was so young. They were so young and inexperienced. Ellis Robinson and DeMello Jones are like still on the precipice of starting to get a consistent playing time for this offense. And they're early in the early stages of their career. Not only that, Georgia's safety room was still very young at the time. I mean, Kyron Jones was also entering the starting point of his starting career at the University of Georgia in that game as well. Now you've worked in Ja'Cory Thomas and Zion Branch in his absence, and Ellis Robinson is playing really well. DeMello Jones is playing really well, and Dalen Everett continues to do what he has his entire career at Georgia of just playing sound football, and he's never an issue. You don't ever have to worry about 6 over there. It's been 1 or 15 that teams try and pick on, but those two guys are really starting to mature, and you're seeing it right in front of you. So I think that that's something worth noting too, is Georgia's secondary is a lot better and a lot more experienced than they were the first time around.
Yeah, all good points. Completely agree. So I guess I'm put you on the hot seat here. Who you got? What's your pick?
Yeah, I made my prediction on Tuesday for our show. And I picked Alabama to win 27-26. Okay. It's just kind of one of those things. Our show, we talk about consistency all the time. Like, we just want you to be consistent. And unfortunately, Alabama has consistently won this game for Georgia. Like, if you're a Georgia fan, like, they just have consistently found ways to win, or if you want to label it as Georgia has consistently found ways to lose, that's just how it is. So it almost feels like a disservice to myself if I don't pick Alabama to win this game, because that's just how it's been. I mean, that's the history of this matchup. You said it before at the beginning of the show. One of 7 Kirby Smart is against Alabama. But I will say this to any Georgia fans that are like, dang, we can't even trust in our guy JWill to be on our side. I have picked Alabama one time to beat Georgia in these matchups since I started covering the Bulldogs back in 2021. And it was a national title game. So you can take that information how you want, but I got Alabama winning a super close one. But Dogs are in the playoff. You get a home playoff game. Can't complain too much about that.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah. I can't – I've always been to Larry Munson. My newly wife said that in that last game, just your energy was bad in the room, just because I just felt it was like it's going to slip through at the end. I've seen this movie too many times.
Right.
But I think it's going to be history road to 30. Who can get 30 back to the 2021 national title? So I'm going to go 31-28, late touchdown to get it by Nate Frazier. And
I like
Kirby
it.
goes 2-7. And here's my next question, because we're going to get into the playoff rankings. We win a close one against Alabama. Any chance we knock them out of the playoffs?
Close game? Probably not. I think that Alabama being at number 9 in the rankings this past weekend, or this past week, a couple of days ago, I should say, I think that puts them in a position where they're really comfortable. They should feel rather comfortable. Now, they get blown out by 30 points by some miracle, then yeah, you start having a discussion of, does a 3-loss Alabama team need to be in the playoff? And it also depends on, like, what does BYU do this weekend? Like, do they upset Texas Tech? Now you're talking about, does Texas Tech stay in the playoffs, or do we take both Big 12 teams, that sort of thing? So, like, that situation could put Alabama in some trouble in the result of a loss. But I remember last year's committee, they made a major emphasis on the point that they don't want to punish teams that play in a conference title game. We'll see if this year's committee agrees. We never know what the heck they're going to be thinking or what they're even talking about most of the time. But that's certainly something to pay attention to. And while the rankings indicate Alabama should be comfortable, if they do lose this weekend, I'm sure that they'll be sitting on the edge of their seats on Sunday morning, making sure that they didn't get screwed over.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do think even though Nick Saban's not there anymore, a little Alabama bias. But looking at it, any interesting updates? Then also, who's maybe the team that's really sweating it on Sunday? Is it Miami? I know Texas is probably out with 3 losses. Who's maybe some interesting? Let's just say if all the favorites win.
Right. I mean, I would say Notre Dame, they're not feeling very comfortable right now. I mean, Alabama jumps them in the rankings after Alabama beats an unranked Auburn team. Now, I get it. Alabama is the number 1 team in the SEC right now based on the numbers and based on the rankings and everything. Like, that's the top team in the SEC. They're the home team this weekend, despite Georgia being in front of them. So it makes sense maybe why they would jump them. But Notre Dame, and this is the issue with them not playing in a conference, if you are a Notre Dame fan, if you're for some reason listening to this Georgia podcast because you guys don't play in a conference, you are a sitting duck every weekend on conference championship weekend. And you might see that as a good thing because you don't have to play an extra game, but it also doesn't give you an opportunity to build up that resume even more and really put it in your own hands where we lock ourselves in ourselves this coming weekend. And we have no qualms about anything. We don't have any issues. We're not worried one bit going into Selection Sunday, but because you're not in a conference championship game, you're stuck at 12 games no matter what, no matter how well you play throughout the year, no matter what. So you're just a sitting duck this weekend, and you're at the mercy of whatever else happens in college football. And, for example, like I just mentioned, if BYU does upset Texas Tech this weekend and they win the Big 12, Notre Dame's probably out because then you got to throw in the G5 team or whoever, like an ACC team. If they win, then they jump into that mix as well. Or 2 G5 teams if Duke upsets Virginia and Duke isn't rated higher than, like, all these issues. Like, Notre Dame needs to be hoping and praying that Texas Tech wins. That's their biggest thing right now.
Yeah, I think they're heavy favorite too, 12.5-point spread, and they're loaded. Yeah. So we'll see. And then one other thing. So worst case scenario, Georgia sitting here is 3. Let's say if we lose another close one, hate to even say that again, Alabama. What's how far does Georgia fall? You think worst case?
Yeah, I think that Georgia is really locked up a first-round playoff home game. At the worst-case scenario, you lose a close one to Alabama. I can't remember how far Texas dropped last year after a SEC championship game, but they didn't drop very far. So I would say that Georgia, you're going into this weekend is 3. Worst case, absolute worst case scenario for you. I could see you fall into 6. Alabama jumping up ahead of you as they should if they're SEC champs. You have the same record as them, all that stuff. So I think Georgia's I guess worst case, the 7th seed, if you want to say. But I don't really see them falling past 6. So like I mentioned earlier, I think that they're a home playoff team in the first round. Worst case scenario, if you lose this weekend to Alabama, that's just kind of how I see it. I don't think they're going to punish Georgia too much. I mean, they're an 11-1 team at the end of the regular season. They played multiple ranked teams. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Tennessee, who's not ranked anymore. But you get my point. They've proven themselves enough. So I don't think they're going to punish them too much no matter what happens this weekend.
Okay, if we drop down to 5th, there's no way we probably run into Mr. Carson Beck coming to Athens at 12, would we?
Boy, oh boy, wouldn't that be something? I think the TV ratings and ESPN and the College Football Playoff Committee, secretly, they would probably like that. They would love to be able to say, oh, Georgia loses to Alabama. We'll put them at 5. And who do we have at 12? Oh, the Miami Hurricanes. Carson Beck returning to Athens. Yeah, they would absolutely love that. But I think if you get the 5 seed, you're more than likely going to get a Tulane or James Madison or North Texas, whoever it's going to be. Or you might even get the ACC champion. We'll see how that plays out. I don't know. But more than likely, you'll get a pretty favorable matchup. But I think deep down there are a lot of Georgia fans that would happily welcome the Miami Hurricanes to Athens for a playoff game in the first round.
Yeah, that'll be definitely storylines. That'd be interesting. And then real quick, let's look at National Signing Day. It happened yesterday. I don't want to beat the dead horse. We know Jared Curtis ends up going to Vanderbilt. I think it'll be interesting. I think from the schedule, Georgia might see him next year at home.
They do.
With they're losing offensive line, so he might have a little receipt coming to him. He'll probably love that. Yep. But any of them that stuck out, or maybe which of the commits could maybe play right away and have a big impact, or guys you were excited about?
Play right away. I think that it's kind of hard to find guys that play right away because the guys that I want to say, there's players potentially returning at their positions. Now, I think you could look at some of the interior offensive line guys. I'm a huge Tyreek Jemison fan. If you go and watch that tape, it is nothing but murderer's row. That guy is pushing people into the ground. I mean, he is legitimately murdering and catching bodies constantly on his highlight reel. So I was a huge fan of his tape. He's playing tackle at high school. I think he'll be kicked inside. So losing a guy like Micah Morris this offseason, I think you could maybe see him in contention for that starting spot. I think some of the wide receivers you got are pretty talented, like Craig Dandridge and Ryan Mosley. I am huge fans of. I think those are really high floor guys, but also have ceilings that exceed past that, and they could be impact guys. But that's also with saying your 2025 wide receiver class was loaded, and those a lot of those guys are going to be getting playing time next year. So it's kind of hard to find a guy that would be playing immediately. Maybe you look at some of the defensive line guys, knowing that you're going to be losing probably Christian Miller to the NFL draft and maybe some other guys in that mix. Like Valdon Stone, he's been a massive name. He's been one of the biggest risers in the class. He's certainly a guy that I would be paying attention to. Kamari Brooks, that's kind of not an under-the-radar guy, but a guy I would say he's just a pure football player, understands the game, high intelligence type of guy. You can see it on his tape constantly. If anything, I could see him just working his way to where it's we got to play this guy. So those are just a few names that I would keep it on. But really, like I mentioned, a lot of the guys that you're bringing in at a lot of those positions, you're returning starters that are going to be playing next year. Like the linebacker group this year, we'll see what Raylan Wilson ultimately decides with his future. But, I mean, you still got Justin Williams, Chris Cole, Zayden Walker, and those guys in the mix. DB room's taken care of because Ellis Robinson and DeMello Jones are set to return as well. Safety room is set because KJ Bolden has another. You see what I'm saying? It's hard to find guys that maybe would play year one, but we'll see what the first thing you got to take care of is see what happens in the transfer portal. See where you do have some holes on the roster after that. See where you're lacking depth. And then you'll get some answers of it certainly sets up to where a true freshman could play here. I mean, Kirby Smart said today on his little teleconference ahead of the SEC championship game that, I mean, he sits there at practice every day and he just looks around at all the true freshmen that are in there too deep. And it's more than he has ever imagined. And he said, I'm sure it'll be the same way next year. So certainly guys in that rotation in that class that you'll see on the field pretty early, I would imagine.
Yeah, like Kirby said at the beginning of the year, really young. These guys are going to have to mature, which they have. I think they're hitting their stride. And then I want to start any rumors because I'm sure we'll have hand wringing coming up. But do you think it's going to be a lot of attrition going in the portal, or I really like that we only have one portal, which helps out. Do you think there'll be a lot of changes or a lot of movement?
Yeah, it's so hard to tell. Like,
Yeah.
Obviously, like Daniel Harris has said, he plans to enter the transfer portal already. I'm sure that was one that Georgia fans could really feel out because that was a guy that started for Georgia at the end of the year, took the job away from Julian Humphrey, and then he comes into this season and he starts as a starter, and then it gets kind of taken away by DeMello Jones and Ellis Robinson. So I think that one you could kind of foresee coming. Everywhere else, I don't know that I really see anything where it's like, that guy's not playing. Now, like offensive line, that's always a room where you're going to experience some type of attrition because there's so many guys and there's so many bodies in the room. And Stacey Searles has done such a great job of building up that room that it's almost impossible. But I kind of see, despite what I said about the 2026 class and how there's a lot of starters returning, I kind of see where there's some doors opening for guys to open up next year, and they could get some playing time. So I don't know how many they'll lose to the portal. I can't remember how many they average usually, but I would imagine it'd be somewhere around like 18 players ultimately probably enter the portal. That's usually seems to be around the number that they get at. So we'll see how that goes. But that's kind of where you really start to see of where maybe you're going to see some true freshmen pop up. And then also on top of that, some places where Georgia's going to add in some transfers. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the quarterback front, I know we lost Jared Curtis. You think any chance of getting in the portal? Because next year, it'll be Gunner's coming back. You'll have Ryan Puglisi and Ryan Montgomery. I think maybe get another guy or just.
Kirby's rule has always been that he wants 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster at all times. They have that right now. Again, kind of one of those things of you'll have to wait and see what happens in the portal with them. Like, do they have a guy dip out of the room? If so, very well could see Georgia get into the portal. I mean, bottom line is if Georgia thinks that they can add, if they can make their roster better by adding somebody, they don't care how many players they have in a room, they'll do it. If they see a quarterback in the transfer portal this year and they like them and he likes them, then I could very well see it happen. I think this year you're kind of set, or going into next year kind of set because Gunnar Stockton, everybody expects to come back. Ryan Puglisi, he seems like next man up. Ryan Montgomery, just a true freshman. Hezekiah Millender, he's just a true freshman. And then also you got Coulter Ginn. So, like, you kind of have a lot of bodies in there, and you feel like pretty confident you're going to keep those guys going into next year. But, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to try and dip their toe into the quarterback portal and see what they could find.
Yeah, we'll see on that. I completely agree. Yeah, JWill, appreciate you coming on again. How do we follow you guys on social media? I know you're a big you're on the Film Guy Network. Mm-hmm. I was looking at you guys, man, 87,000 and growing, which is, you guys are blowing up. Always enjoy watching you guys are on every day. Yeah.
Oh, appreciate it, man. I love it. Yeah, I'm trying to hit the 100K mark by the end of the year, so really pushing up on that one right now. We're super excited about that. The growth has been phenomenal. So, yeah, YouTube right there, the Film Guy Network, Monday through Thursdays, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. We do film studies just about every day, mostly on the Georgia Bulldogs, also on any team in college football. So if you're not a Georgia fan, we probably have a film study up on your team if you have a big matchup coming up that weekend. So we do all that stuff. Also on Twitter, Dr._JWill. If you want to give me a follow over there, post all my articles that I work for over on Bulldogs on SI. So you can find all that there as well, like we've thrown up on the screen right there. So, yeah, appreciate that. Always a pleasure jumping on with you, Trey. Appreciate it. But, yeah, that's where you can find my stuff.
Yeah, man. Check out JWill on Twitter and on Film Guy Network as well. They're always having fun over there, really growing. Love hearing Brooke Austin break it down. He's always a straight shooter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Yeah, appreciate you coming on, and let's hope the Dogs can get the win. Exercise demons.